America's children are under attack. Thanks for joining me today on the Sandra Hartstone Show. What do I mean by that? I mean wokeism, the left, those that want to see America fall and become a socialistic, communistic country. They have a plan, and they're doing it through our children. They are attacking our children through our educational system. Well, it's scary, and it's happening in other places around the world, too, where they are targeting the children, and they are bringing the country down through the children, and we have to do something about it. Well, I have some hope because I am finding people across America that are one by one standing up and making a difference. They have a plan. You're going to meet one such amazing young man today. His name is Justin Ford. He lives in Detroit, Michigan, and he has come up with a plan, a year-long plan, where he goes into the school and teaches these kids integrity and values and hope. And he's doing incredible things. You're going to meet him when we come back. Check out Hartstone Network, a place where you'll find feature documentaries, testimonials, and great teachings by many of your favorites. It's a place that we hope will encourage you in your walk with Christ. While there, check out this series we have with Mario Murillo called I Am Not Ashamed. It's a great look into his past and how Jesus has brought him to be the man that he is today. Check us out, heartstonenetwork.com. Welcome back to the Sandra Hartstone Show. Well, we all know there is an attack on our country, and we all know that the way they're attacking our country is through our children. And today we're going to talk with a guy. He's a warrior. His name is Justin Ford, and he is out trying to save our kids. He's trying to combat all of the evil woke propaganda that's happening to our kids. So I want you to hear his story. Justin, welcome. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks so much for having me, Sandra. I appreciate it.
So you are out in the schools trying to teach kids values and trying to save them from all this woke culture. Why don't we begin by you sharing a little bit about your story and what's given you such a passion to do this?
Absolutely. It's interesting. I'm 40 years old, and I look back to when I was in school. A lot of stuff is the same, but I think it's just elevated at such a higher level, especially through technology and a lot of the stuff that we see, taking place to where kids are definitely being distracted and reached at a much more higher, more sophisticated level. And so, I grew up in a broken home, like unfortunately many youth have done, and was a good kid, right? I played sports growing up, and had good grades, was on the honor roll, and had a goal. My grandfather was an attorney, and he told me, he said, if you stay out of trouble and you go to college, I'll give you my law firm. So I was super excited about that. However, like many of the youth today, was, faced with a lot of peer pressure, got into high school, and as a teenager, started experimenting with, drugs and alcohol at a very early age, having sex, just doing a lot of the things that a lot of the kids around me were doing. And unfortunately, little did I know that those temptations would lead me down a very dark path. And between the ages of 17 and 19, I acquired 8 misdemeanors and a felony, sold drugs to an undercover cop, overdosed, almost died, got beat up by the police, lost my driver's license for 10 years, dropped out of high school, got a girl pregnant. And my life had gotten so low, on drugs and alcohol, that there was this time that I had gotten arrested, and I was on all types of different drugs, and I was up over 24 hours completely dehydrated, got arrested, and the police officer wouldn't give me anything to drink. And so I thought I was going to die, and my life had gotten so low that I actually drank water out of a toilet in jail just to stay alive. And,
wow.
Well,
I just want to say, I'm pretty sure that ended your political future.
It's interesting because I thought, that period of time in my life, I was like stuck, and I didn't know how to break free. And I was, just in bondage. And I remember after I got into this drunk driving accident, I just cried out to God in jail. I mean, I was already on probation from a previous drunk driving. It wasn't looking good for me. I was on probation in 4 cities, and it was looking pretty rough for me. And I just said, God, if you'll give me a second chance, I'll change. And that judge read my rap sheet, let me out with no bond, which was completely a miracle. And I went and checked myself into a Christian treatment center here in Michigan. And at 19, became a Christian. It transformed my life, and here I am today.
Wow.
Yep.
Whew. So
Yeah.
what do you do on a daily basis to make a living?
Yeah, so I own a real estate company. So I'm also a real estate coach, motivational speaker now. Just wrote a book, and yeah, it's been pretty incredible. But one of the things that we did is at 19, I had to go through, as you can imagine, all the penalties and repercussions of making the mistakes that I did. Well, from the drunk driving accident that I got into, one of the things that I was sentenced to was to go to an alcohol class where I had to sit with a lady from Mothers Against Drunk Driving who shared her testimony on how her son got killed by a drunk driver. And so at this time, I'm already a Christian. At this time, I'm already saved. My life is changing, and I really felt like I had a testimony and a story to tell. And so I went up to the lady after the class and I said, "Hey," I said, I would love to share my story, to young people." She said, "Well, how would you like to come speak at a school with me and share your story?" I said, I'd love to. While I was in the rehab, I felt God was calling me to be a speaker. I just, had a couple prophetic words spoken over me that I was going to share my story, and I looked for opportunities for that. And then all of a sudden, just started speaking in schools all over, Michigan, sharing my story with kids. And I saw the impact that it was making. I saw many of the kids that would come up to me afterwards and say, "Hey, I'm struggling with, drinking, or I'm struggling with, smoking weed or any of these things." And it's led me down a path of, sharing my story and working in schools for the last 20 years.
Well, tell me what happens when you go in school because you don't get to talk about God, do you?
Yeah, so no, but it's pretty interesting because God shows up and they feel something there, and I really give the same principles and things from Scripture without really saying biblical words. But what's interesting is I work a lot in the inner city of Detroit, and because the inner city of Detroit, a lot of inner cities all across the country, are struggling so much. We've actually had schools tell us, "Hey, we don't care what you do, we just need some change," and they've actually allowed us to share our faith in the gospel even in schools. And so I was doing this by myself for many years, and I created this program called the Champions Challenge. And the Champions Challenge is basically I'd go in one day and I'd speak at all these different classes, and I'd talk about, success and not being a statistic and, changing your life and doing something great. And what I would find is, even in the roughest schools, even in classrooms where all the kids are pretty much failing and dealing with a lot of stuff, they all wanted to be successful. I'd ask them, "Hey, if you want to be successful and do something with your life, raise your hand." They'd all share what they wanted to be and what they wanted to do. And unfortunately, after I'd leave each day, I felt like, what change am I really making? And after leaving one of the roughest schools in Detroit and hearing all the kids, share their stories with me, several of them shared how they, witnessed their dad being murdered, or, just these horrific stories that you really don't hear a lot of times in the suburbs. And I left and walked out of that school, in Northwestern High School in Detroit, in tears in the parking lot. And I just said, "God," I said, "I don't want to just go in here and do a rah-rah session, and then after I leave, all these kids go back to the same, situation and circumstances." I said, "Either give me a program or connect me with people to create a program that can actually help kids, not just hear a great motivational, 1 hour, speech, but to really create some change and some impact." And so very not too long after that, I met a couple of people who had a background of working with kids, and we created this Champions Challenge program from a 1 hour thing to a 90-day program where we actually go into schools and do a 90-day curriculum where we're teaching character education. We're giving the kids principles that they can apply to their lives, to their schoolwork, to their home life, leadership, the importance of being a leader and making better decisions, and then really success, not just saying, "Hey, I want to be successful," but teaching these kids how to be successful today, how to be successful, when in conflict, how to be successful in, doing your schoolwork, and how what you do today leads to what you want to be tomorrow. And we actually had statistics ran in one of the schools that we worked with in Detroit, where they looked at the kids' attendance and their grades and their behavior from when we started and then when we were done, and everything improved. And so we're actually now really taking things to the next level, and we're really looking to take this program all across the country and create a program around it, to where not only are we going in the schools and working with the kids, but we're engaging the local community, local businesses, local churches, local leaders to support these kids, support these homes, even after we're gone.
Well, how do you get into the school and do this? I mean, because they're in class. What has this volunteer or what is it?
Yeah, so we've actually created a program where now this early on it was volunteer, because we were going in and we had no track record, right? So we just said, hey,
Right.
we'll come in and do this for free, and we partnered with a local ministry here that created some big time community outreach with a lot of the major corporations in the area, and so we kind of piggybacked off of them, and they allowed us to go in kind of on their name to start working with these kids. And now that we have a track record, we're reaching out to schools that are in our local community and presenting this, and we're hearing the problems, especially after COVID, what it's done from a behavior standpoint. And teachers and principals and staff see the effect that had
Wow.
on kids. And so we're offering a solution, and people are saying yes.
So do you go in and take class time or is this after
Yep.
school?
No,
It's
that's
during
actually during the day.
class.
Yeah, they give us a class. Many of the schools have a period of time where it's like, catch up on your
Oh,
work,
study
work on
hall,
like
study
a
hall.
study hall. Yeah. So they're giving us the entire study hall, and we're going in during study hall. We bring lunch, so then we engage the local businesses like, hey, how would you like to support lunch this week for 50 kids? And so we have the school. It's so interesting. So the school that I dropped out of, the high school that I dropped out of, the principal was one of our class teachers. Like every year, there's usually
Oh, yes.
te- yeah. So this was one of the teachers that was there when I was there. Well, she brought me in back in 2014 to be the keynote speaker at the graduation, which was a big honor of mine since I didn't graduate. And when I met with her last year, re-engaged with her just to kind of see how things were going, she kind of explained to me what the issues were. And I explained to her, we have a program that we can come in and we can work with the kids. Unfortunately, we don't do it for free anymore. It is going to cost money, which schools have money for programs like this. And they recently approved it, and so we're going in starting next month. And she said, we'll give you the entire freshman class, because that's the class that's having the most problems. And so we're going to work with the entire freshman class, which is like 400 or 500 kids, over the rest of the year, and really get in and start working with them. And she said it's needed big time.
Oh my gosh. So do you go in like once a week or every
Yeah,
day or
once a week.
what?
Yep, once a week for 90 days.
For
And
how
so we
long?
can
1 hour? 1 hour and
One
45
hour,
minutes?
about an hour and a half, because we do lunch, and then
Yeah.
and then we do the class. And what's neat is we go into the classroom. We have what we call mentors. So we have 4 or 5 different mentors depending on the size of the class.
Mhm.
I speak and do the lesson on. We take the word champions. So champions challenge. We take the word champions, and we create a lesson around each letter. So creating higher achievement, motivation, purpose, innovation, and ownership necessary for success. And so we go in and we talk about what it means to create something, and we actually have them work on a project, what it means to reach higher and go above and beyond your current circumstances. And we take them through these different acronyms, and we break them up into groups. So they work with a mentor, so it's hands-on. And what we found is it's not even so much what they're working on that makes the change, it's the relationship that we build with them. And especially, kids who are really struggling, that don't have parents, that don't have support, that don't have, that backing, where they just have turned to drugs and alcohol and trouble. And when we come alongside of them and we really begin to show them that we care and that we begin to teach them things, we find that what we teach them is a lot more impactful, because we're there and we're showing up every week, we're bringing lunch, and we care. And by the end of the program, they want to go tell the other kids in the school what this program did for them, and then we kind of build like an inner circle of kids now reaching out to other kids for the good.
Wow. My gosh, this is very exciting. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
so if you're going in for an hour and a half once a week, how are you getting to 500 kids?
Yeah, so what we do is we create multiple different groups. So this group here that we're going into this school will be the first one where they want to open this up to the entire school. The ones we've done previously were just, hey, we're going to give you the roughest kids in the school, start with them. And so we've just done that, but now this is actually opening up to, hey, we our whole ninth grade class needs this. And so we're actually, every group that we do, we will actually have an additional set of mentors. And so our goal is to duplicate the program, create it as a video curriculum, and just find people that actually have either worked with kids or have a desire to work with kids. Obviously, do an extensive background check, make sure they're good, and then mentor them on how to be mentors through this program and really turn it into a video curriculum where it can be taught all over the country.
Wow. So are you getting like business owners or nurses, or just are you getting professional, or what kind of
Yeah.
people are you getting from the community?
Yeah, we're reaching out to people through churches of people that really, feel a call to the education mountain, or even just people in general that feel a call to the educational mountain. And so this next phase of it is pretty new to us because we realize that, hey, we don't want to just go in, and do a 90-day program. We want to get these kids connected to local churches. We want to do this. In matter of fact, the school that I'm referring to that's allowing us to come back in, they don't have a Bible club. The guy that was leading the Bible club after school retired. And so I asked the principal, can we start a Bible club as well? She said, absolutely. So we're going to start a Bible club.
Yeah.
And then we're going to basically disciple and mentor the kids that are in the Bible club to go into the school and evangelize the other kids. And then we're going to create like like an outreach or some type of rally that's going to be after school where we're going to worship, we're going to pray, and we're going to present the gospel and get these kids saved.
Wow. Justin, wow. Wow. You're making my day, man. So listen, how much time does this take from you? Because you're running a business, to feed your family. How much time does this take every week?
It's really just an hour and a half each week to go in and work with the kids, and the other leadership that we've assembled within our group takes care of the administrative, takes care of reaching out to the local businesses and the local churches. And so what's great is I just get to show up and do what I do best, and that's teach and really motivate.
And then so other people come in who are not necessarily there for the teaching, but they come in to work with them and mentor them.
Yep. So we break off into groups, and we have, each person, mentor about 5 or 6 kids each. And we actually have them work on a project. So it's not like they're just sitting around learning. We actually, when we do and the acronym of champions, creating is right off the bat in week 2, we say, we want you to create something that's going to better the school or the community. And we let them pick it. And then we support them throughout this 90 days of, hey, we
Wow.
see a need that, this part of the school, there's something that needs to be better, or we see a need here that needs to be worked on. And then we help them create this opportunity to, create a solution, whether it's in their school or in their community.
Okay, so I have a question. Give me an example of a project someone did that you liked, and did it actually make a difference in the school? Did the school implement it?
Yeah, so the last one that we did, so we've done this the last 2 summers with a program that the mayor of Detroit started called GDYT, Growing Young Talent in Detroit, basically. And so we were assigned these kids through this program. There's 130 programs through the mayor's office, and we ended up being in the top 3. There was only 3 out of 120 that had 100% participation. And one of the things that the kids came up with was basically raising money and support to create backpacks to give away to kids in the community that couldn't afford a backpack before school. And then what we did is we had this big event at the park in Detroit, and we had a DJ there, we had food, we had like a bunch of activities, and kids came and lined up to get their backpacks and their supplies for school. So that was,
Oh my
and
gosh.
the kids in the group came up with that. They're the ones that create it. We don't give them
Yeah.
the ideas; they come
Yeah.
up with their own ideas.
And
We
you
just
know
support
what?
it.
Those kids that created this and gave those backpack away, oh my gosh, you probably did more just in that than in a lot of other things. They probably were touched more than the kids getting the backpacks.
Yep. And now those kids that have graduated high school are now coming back to be mentors in our program because now they want to make an impact and help the other kids.
Wow. So is this in
Yep.
regular public school? Is it in impoverished areas? Is it everywhere? Is it?
Yeah. So we've primarily worked in inner city. This year, this next program is in the suburbs, but it's a public school that definitely struggles. But this program can really be implemented anywhere because we know kids are struggling all over. Even with you see the bullying taking place. You
Yeah.
see just unfortunate things in our schools today. And we believe that there's an identity crisis. Kids do not know who they are. Therefore, they try to fit in over here or do this, that, or over there. They're struggling emotionally. Emotionally, we see a lot of suicide rates at an all-time high right now with youth. And what we want to do is really get in and let them know that their lives do matter and that they have been created for greatness. And we want to support them and teach them things, meet them where they are. And again, not just teach them how to be successful, but if we can build a relationship with them outside of the school, which we've done with many kids, we've led a lot of kids to the Lord, is we want them to be born again and have them go down the path of what they were created to be. And we know that if we can kind of go in as recon into the schools through a success education program, but in turn it leads kids into the kingdom outside of the school, that's what it's all about.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
So give me some measurable results that you've had.
Yeah. So unfortunately, a lot of kids, especially in the inner city, are failing, and they pass kids. As long as they show up, they pass kids. And so we have statistics showing kids completing their homework assignments. We have kids who are actually scoring higher on tests. We have attendance that we've tracked where kids' attendance rates have actually gone up. Kids who have dropped out of gangs. We had
Wow.
one kid who was selling drugs. His mom left home, so he was actually raising his younger brother. He was 16.
Oh
So
my.
he was at the house. He had no hot water. The hot water tank had broke. And we helped this kid not only because he was selling drugs after school to provide for his younger brother. We helped him get a job. I actually signed for him to get a job, helped him purchase some clothes that he could actually wear to actually work at the Little Caesars Pizza. And he began doing the right thing. And a lot of these kids, we still stay in touch with. Another one was pregnant at 16 years old, living in a hotel. That's how she would go to school. We helped her get into housing after she had her baby, and she actually ended up graduating with honors and went on to college locally. And so there's all sorts of different stories that we've seen that we've been able to come alongside of a lot of these kids and really help them. And again, they don't have anywhere to turn, and they don't think anybody believes in them, and they feel like they're already starting with a disadvantage. And so if we can come alongside of them and help them and maybe open up some doors for them, be a sign for them, as a reference to get a job, whatever it may be, it's made a difference in a lot of people's lives.
I'll tell you what, I'm about to come out of my skin. I'm so excited about this. This is
Yep.
off the chart.
Yeah.
Wow. Now this is
Yep.
what I'm talking about. This is something people need to do. And you don't have a high school degree or a college degree. And look what
Nope.
you did. I'm telling you,
Amen.
where there's a will, there's a way. Okay, I want to hear more about this. We've got to take a break, and then we are going to come right back. A number of years ago, I was walking along Lake Michigan, and without warning, I felt the Spirit of God drop in my spirit. Remember the story of King David facing Goliath? I then sensed he was telling me to pick up 5 smooth stones from the sand. Why the stones? Well, they represent the colors of people on the earth. Also, during the many years I've been a filmmaker, God has often made it clear to me that my job is to reveal His heart in the stories we tell. That's what Heartstone Network is about, revealing the heart of God to the peoples of the earth through stories.
We had to have a government official give us permission to leave with the kids so we wouldn't be accused of child trafficking.
In the meantime, our houses were being looted. Everything was being looted.
It was the hotspot of rioting and destruction in America, was 2 blocks away. When the world saw 5,000 people show up in the heart of Portland, something happened in the soul of the nation. God's flipping the script.
Hey, I'm Lance Wallnow, and I'm so glad you joined me today for the world's maybe while this Bible study, because what we're going to be doing right now is going into the word of the Lord for the chaos of this moment.
I want to introduce you to somebody that I think can make a big difference in your life. I want to say that to you because he made a big difference in my life.
No, I didn't bring food for all these kids. I brought food for your family. I said, they are our family. I just remember John 6 and how Jesus took that little boy's lunch and just gave thanks to the Father. And I said to the kids, let's all sit down. We just started serving up these big plates, and we didn't look in the pot. We just started serving the kids.
The power of the Lord will become more real and tangible to you in this class in a way that really nothing else I've experienced can make happen.
In this Inspired Media channel, you will find true stories of ordinary people living extraordinary lives because they're partnered with an incredible God. Our heart's desire is to encourage, prepare, and teach you to be a sphere of influence in the area God has called you to for such a time as this. Our content is free and supported by viewer donation. We're glad you're here. Come on in. I hope you will consider sharing your story with the world.
Well, we are back with the amazing Justin Ford, who is changing his world. Wow, Justin, this is phenomenal. Yeah. I hope other people are just as excited and as encouraged as I am. So listen, let me ask you a question. Did you have trouble? Did you have to like fight and claw and try real hard to get into the schools? Or were they so desperate for help they said, bring it, let's just see what happened?
No, it hasn't been hard at all. And what's interesting is going back to what I was saying earlier is my school district, which I grew up here in Michigan. You know, I was one of the rebels to the point where the principal even said I was the greatest success story to ever come out of the school. So a complete turnaround. And you know, what really changed my revelation and understanding of the need for this was when I really understood the 7 mountains, right? And how at the top of these mountains, there's an influence to intentionally, you know, to destroy people or influence people a certain way in that mountain. And in the education mountain, you just look at how, you know, over the years, God has been completely removed. We see now what they're teaching in the schools about, you know, transgenderism and all this other stuff, and how, you know, everything is to influence kids in the wrong way. And so I had received a prophetic word about 5 years ago that God was taking me back to my school district, and he was going to basically give me the high school. And, you know, I sometimes take prophetic words and I put it on the shelf and just wait for God's timing. And last year I felt led to post the 2014 keynote that I did at the school. So I posted it on Facebook and I shared it again because it's on YouTube. And I got this call from this gentleman, and he said he was with the alumni publication or alumni committee or something. He said, "Hey, I never knew about your story." Guy's like 80. He's been in the district for 50 years. He's like, "I've never heard about your story. Can I publish your story in next month's, you know, alumni publication?" I said, "Absolutely." And he says, "Oh, by the way, we're having this board meeting, and I'd love to invite you to this board meeting. It's called the Taylor Public Schools Foundation, which is basically a sister partner or the nonprofit wing of the public schools, board." I said, "Absolutely." So I go to the meeting, and I'm sitting at the table with the mayor, the mayor's assistant, the superintendent of the school board, the president of the school board, and basically all of these key people, you know, from the school board. And as I'm sitting there, they're making decisions on how to help support the schools, how to help support the teachers, how to help support the students. And God said, "I've placed you here to influence the school district." And then they asked me, "Hey, would you like to be a part of the board?" And I said, "Absolutely." So they voted me in on the board to now be a part of this school district that I was once a part of. And they're looking to me as one of the people that how can we make a difference here? How can we bring, you know, change to the community, you know, to the school? And then now that the door's been opened for me to go into the high school, we realize this is much bigger than just teaching a program. This is God setting us up to take this school district and this community And now we're engaging, local pastors, right, that have a heart for the city. Now we're engaging, people that are in business in the local community, and God is giving us a blueprint on how to go in, as recon, in a sense, into the school and really set it up for revival.
And you just thought this up, had a dream. How did you come up with this program?
I came up with the initial program, back when I was going in by myself solo, because, when I was living in this homeless shelter, God spoke to me and kind of showed me right away who I was. He says, I'm going to call you to speak. I'm going to call you to use your testimony to impact people and change lives. And when the Mothers Against Drunk Driving lady invited me into the school, I saw the impact of me sharing my testimony and the connection that it made, with the youth. And so as I started to do that, God started to show me that, hey, I'm calling you to do this. And then, when that day when I left and realized that it had to be more than me just doing a motivational assembly, when I said, God, send me a program or people to go in and really create change, that's when it happened. And that's when the momentum of actually going in and working with kids, hands-on versus just an assembly, I really saw the need. And I saw the result of what we were doing and the impact it was making. And we said, this needs to be in every school across the country.
So then you set out to recruit people to volunteer to help you?
Yep, absolutely. And now we have even more of a plan unfolding where the mentors, obviously the goal is, I'll say, is for every mentor to be born again and really feel called into the educational mountain, to the point where when they go in and they're sitting with these kids, they're not just sitting with these kids to teach them success. They're praying in the spirit inside. They're standing in the gap outside of the program. Like, the whole intention is to build a relationship and a bridge with these kids so that, when we do the rally outside of the school, that these kids not only come, but they bring other kids and they encounter Jesus.
Okay, so let's say somebody like me is getting all excited about what you're doing, and I'm thinking, gee, I'd like to do this. Well, I don't have a testimony like you do. My testimony next to yours growing up would be vanilla. Okay, so would I be able to be effective?
Absolutely, because I'm the one that's actually doing the teaching. I'm sharing my testimony. I'm sharing, what I've been through. But where the real change, I believe, happens is in the mentorship relationship with the kids. And we know that not every kid struggles with addiction. Not every kid struggles with behavior issues, but they may struggle with identity. Right? They may struggle with, hey, I have parents at home who are extremely busy that I don't have a relationship with. I get good grades, I make right decisions, but, I feel abandoned. Right? And so as someone that maybe doesn't have the testimony I have, but if you have a passion and desire to impact, young people, God can use you and your story and even just your willingness, to want to make a difference in young people's lives. Because, we create the lesson, we create the roadmap forward. We just need people who have this desire to want to see lives changed, show up and be, I always say, just be the hands and feet of Jesus and serve these kids and make an impact.
Wow. Do they ask you, do they want to seem to know a lot about you personally?
Yeah, they definitely ask questions, and obviously, it's based on how much information you're willing to share. But when they ask questions, that actually shows that their desire to want to get to know you, right? And people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And as you begin to open up and build relationships with these kids, that's where the true change happens. Because, mentorship and somebody in your corner, especially if you don't have that right there alone, having a kid know that someone's in their corner that believes in them, that alone creates change. And we've seen that, make such a huge impact.
Well, I'm sure they're very attracted to you, Justin, because I don't have to ask. I'm sure you're a successful real estate agent, and kids are attracted to other people that are especially self-employed and successful. I've seen that a lot. They're just kind of attracted to that. So listen, Justin, you're in the school, and I want to know, are you seeing in the schools what we hear on the news? Is there really a lot of kids with sexual identity questions? And is that really a hot mess like the news wants us to think?
No, it's a minority. It's not as big as the news and the media play it out to be. And I mean, even when I was in high school, you had kids, and it was kind of more secret, undercover, if they were having, identity issues or, sexual issues. It was possibly known, or maybe a rumor. I mean, today obviously it's more accepted, so the kids have obviously, come out, and they're proud of what they believe in or who they are. But it's definitely not a majority. It's a minority for sure.
Do you speak with many of the teachers in the schools? Like, or is there a problem with all the wokeism that's going on? Like, are teachers all about teaching that, or are there people very upset they have to, or what do you see with the teachers?
I think there's a handful of teachers, that feel, that the wokeism is something that they should support or, talk about, but the majority it's not. I mean, again, I think the media in the news really overplay this to make people think that it really is. And I was at a seminar, last week, and actually I think I told you it was with Lance, and what he had said you know, 3% of the population is LGBTQ, but they make you think it's way more than that, right?
Right.
And they've created such an impact through media and through climbing these mountains to have such influence that they make people think that it's so much bigger than it is. And I think that is a direct attack on kids who are struggling with all these things we're talking about, identity, not knowing who they are. And so maybe they feel like, hey, maybe I can be accepted by this community over here if I choose to go down this path. And I think that's where the enemy is sniping these kids, is because the message is so loud, yet they're the minority. But yet if they have the influence, they're pulling kids in. But it's definitely, when you're in the trenches, it's not the majority at all.
Okay, so give me an up close and personal view of what really is going on in the schools.
I think kids are just struggling with identity. I think now that social media is as big as it is, bullying is a big deal. I think kids are trying to find where they belong. And I mean, even when I was in school, it was the same thing. You find your group that you're a part of, and you try to, be a part of that. But I think it's nothing's changed. It's just been amplified. The teenage years, I think, are some of the most difficult, because kids are trying to discover, who am I? I'm not an adolescent anymore. I'm not a kid. I'm not, this kid where all the kids don't know any different. But then all of a sudden you start getting, these messages of, who you're supposed to be, how you're supposed to dress, how you're supposed to talk, how you're supposed to think. And I think that it's, again, especially after COVID, a lot of kids are dealing with a lot of, mental illness, right? A lot of depression, a lot of discouragement, lack of direction,
Yes.
And I think this generation is looking for something authentic and real.
Right.
And I believe that Jesus is the answer, and we need to be that, right? We've been so, through the separation of church and state, we've been so, what's the word I'm looking for? Programmed to think that, God is just not accepted here. You can't talk about this. You can't do this. Well, yeah, maybe we can't talk about, the Bible, and we can't say biblical verses, but we can be the Bible. We can show the love of Christ, and we can allow the Lord to lead us in the direction that he's calling us to go. And as he's opening these doors, which he's done for me, he opened the door for me to be on this board. He opened the door for us to take this program into the school that I was once a part of. And so one of the things that we're going to begin to do is go to the teachers, go to the staff, go to the kids, find out what their needs are. And we're going to have an entire intercessory team, praying and asking Jesus to create answers for their situations, to show up supernaturally and meet the needs that are going on, and allow them to experience the change, and not us get the credit for it, but for us to be able to let them know that we're praying for them, and we're standing in the gap for them, and really supporting their needs, and meeting needs for them without having to share the gospel.
Yeah. So this culture that's out attacking America to take away our freedoms and make it an anti-God, that sort of thing, they are geared toward our children. They are attacking
100%.
our kids. How do you see them attacking our kids in the most obvious ways and even unobvious ways?
I think it's creating division, right? Between you have to pick a side, right? You're either this or you're that. I think it's definitely the influence through social media. It's through the influence of media. It's through the influence of even a lot of these woke businesses, who have gotten on board. And I think it's also the hey, if you don't believe like us, we're going to treat you a certain way. If you don't, if you're not on our side of the fence, we're not going to, even though we preach equality, we're not going to let you, believe the way you want to believe. And I think these kids are being peer pressured in a different way than we were, because even when I was a kid, we didn't have all this stuff, right? There wasn't any wokeism. There wasn't any, conservative or liberal. There wasn't right wing, left wing, even though those things existed, they just didn't exist the way that they were. And there was really no message to reach kids in a way that they now can through a cell phone, right?
Yeah. You know what it is? It's tribalism.
It is tribalism.
Like you have the Rwanda genocide, which is about tribe versus tribe, and that's what they're trying to create. America was a unique experience because what we were, whether we were white or African or Irish or whatever, or Christian, non-Christian, we were Americans.
Right.
Okay. And now it's dividing up. You're this, you're gay, you're straight, you're whatever. And that's what's causing all this division. And something's got to happen.
Yeah. Something has to happen. And really what we believe is by getting in and working with kids and putting these different kids in groups, right? So you might have a gay kid, and you might have a Black Lives Matter kid, and you might have a this person kid, all working in a group, but they're all working to create something together. And then the stereotypes, that we've been preached to believe about each other, you realize, wow, this kid isn't so bad, or this kid isn't so bad, or, oh, I've been trained to believe that this person, they think a certain way because they label themselves as a Christian. And I've been trained to think this person thinks a certain way because they're labeled this. And oh my gosh, that's not the case at all. And then all of a sudden, now we're creating, community, we're breaking down barriers. And then all of a sudden, what happens is the lie and the deception starts to get exposed.
Well, there's reports that revival is actually breaking out in different places across America, like in some universities and such. Has God spoken to you or anything? Do you think revival is going to break out in schools?
It's interesting because only God can make something like that happen, right? We know that I've been studying a lot about Ed Silvoso, right? He wrote a book called Transformation. He wrote a book called Ecclesia. Obviously Lance Wall now with the 7 Mountains. And what I believe is if we position ourselves, as the Lord is leading, and we serve and we go in understanding that we're in a spiritual battle and we make room for God to show up, I believe that revival can spark in public schools. And I believe that once it does, and it's not looked at from a religious thing, but miracle signs and wonders begin to happen in such a way that it's undeniable. I believe that when people can see what revival looks like from an authentic standpoint, where it's not in the 4 walls of a church or it's not labeled religious, I believe that not only can it break out, but it would spread very quick, because when people can see that Jesus is the answer of what they're looking for, he's the answer of what's needed in schools. And even with the Supreme Court ruling, and I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but the ruling that they just had when they also ruled in favor of Roe v. Wade, being overturned, they just overturned that rule where you're allowed to now bring a Bible into school. You're allowed to now pray in school. And because they overturned the ruling that was against I think it was the teacher or the football coach that was basically being penalized for praying. Yeah. That they now have to respect and allow Christianity back into schools in a way where I believe that's the door that's now opening for us to go in. Because here's the strategy. I can't go into the school and preach the gospel every day, but if I can mentor and disciple kids in an after-school Bible study, and we can intentionally pour into them, intentionally disciple them, and support them in such a way that we release them as evangelists into their school, revival can break out. And it's going to happen with the kids. The kids are going to be the ones that bring the revival that God's going to use.
I believe that. Now, as you've talked to these kids, undoubtedly you've shared your faith with some of these kids in some way. What's their reaction to you? Because religion has given us Christianity a bad rap.
It has. It goes back to, I think, what you were saying a few minutes ago. When they see someone who models success in a way that makes sense to them, right? And I believe we don't attract who we want, we attract who we are. And so we attract people to us that can relate to us. Not every kid's going to relate to me, right? I'm not going to relate to every kid in the school, but the ones that God has specifically for me to connect with, and this is what I've seen, when they see what I've been through, because even in the inner school, I'll go into an all-black school as a white boy and share my testimony, and all of a sudden that wall of racism or wall of being stereotyped goes down, and I start connecting with them. They're like, holy cow, like, we're not the only ones that go through hard times. We're not the only ones who experience hardship. And Justin, you've not only experienced hardship, but you've overcame and you've created success. And I think once you earn their respect, they're more open to hear what got you there. And for me, when I share, hey, you know what? I didn't just, become successful because one day I woke up and decided to make a different decision. I became a Christian and Jesus changed my life. And outside of school, I can say, and he can change yours too. And I've led multiple kids, young men, to the Lord outside of school that started first and foremost in a classroom setting because that was the open door.
Wow. Wow. So are many of these kids going on to have, because you've been doing this how many years?
Close to 10 years.
So you've had time for kids to go through high school, go through college, and get into the workforce.
Yep. And many of them, one in particular, I mean, as I think he was in 9th or 10th grade. I mean, this kid was always showing his guns, on social media, his drugs. And I mean, this kid was literally heading for death because the average African-American young man, the statistics are just horrible when you look them up, that how many go to jail or how many end up getting killed or, doing bad stuff. And this young man was headed in the wrong direction. And he's the one that I was telling you about that, that I would, pray with and helped him get a job and helped him start making the right decisions. Well, now he has a daughter and he has totally changed his life. He's living for the Lord and he's making the right decisions. He's working a job. And so, there's the ones that I actually have the ability, to make a relationship with and connect with, I've seen these kids' lives completely changed.
This is just fantastic. Do you have people contacting you wanting to start this in other school districts, or are you spreading out to other school districts yet?
So 10 years ago, when we really started going really all in to this program, we worked with a handful of schools. And again, it was really more of an experiment because we had never done it before. And then my real estate career took off. Another lady is a former principal of a high school. Another lady, had a nonprofit. And so for a handful of years, we kind of went our different direction, and started going into, these different fields. And when I received that prophetic word that God was taking me back into the schools and he wanted to do something, a year and a half ago, we got back together and we've done the summer program the last 2 years. Now we're going back into this high school. So we have not advertised this. We have not marketed this, but we believe this next school is really going to be the blueprint on how to take this across the country.
Well, we are out of time, but Justin, thank you so much for being on and sharing the story and getting me all excited. So you'll have to come back and give us an update as you go along.